Muy buenas noches. Les habla Nasi Boricua. Today we're going to be doing episode 7 of In the Clouds podcast. I'm your co-host Serge. Today's episode is brought to you by Rumbon Dance here in Tribu Studios. Rumbon Dance offers adult classes in bachata and Colombian salsa for beginners. Classes are Wednesdays and Fridays, all summer from 7 to 8. Find Rumbon Dance on Facebook and Instagram, and you can find more information and class sign-up at rumbonsdancestudio.com. Like I said, I'm your co-host, Serge.
And I'm your co-host, Josh.
Today, we're going to be interviewing some teachers from Buffalo. I got Gigi the engineer.
What's up?
And Ame Dog.
What's up?
How are you ladies doing today?
Not bad. It was our last day of school. Hallelujah.
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 Okay.
All right. So we're going to ask you a few questions, have a good-ass conversation today. You're going to give us a scoop on some shit, right?
Of course.
All right. So first things first, how did you get your start into teaching?
You want to take this one first, or?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm interested. I don't know your story.
This all goes back. Shout out to my high school French teacher, who was my favorite teacher of all time. She told me, you know what would be good for you is to go into linguistics, because in French class I was always really good with identifying different features of the language. And I was like, you know what, you're right, because I trusted her opinion that much. So I literally made a life decision based on her advice. So I went to college for linguistics, and linguistics can only take you into so many different areas. You can go into research where you travel the world and study different languages, compile data, which is, you know, I wanted to stay local. I wasn't trying to do all that. Or you could be a speech pathologist, which I wasn't trying to do that either. Or you could be a teacher. You could be any kind of teacher, especially an ESL teacher. And I do love different cultures, so I was like, you know what, let me teach the kids who don't know English. I'm going to learn a lot of different cultures. So I stayed at the same college to do my master's degree, and went to a couple different schools, and here I am.
Awesome.
Nice. Ame Dog.
I don't have a great story. I think I went into it, you know, my dad was a Buffalo public school teacher for 30 years, and my mother was a registered nurse, and I'm very squeamish. People used to ask me when I was little, oh, do you want to be a nurse like your mommy? And I was like,
Nope.
I knew for sure, you know. I always loved kids. I'm great with kids. I'm very social. I always just attracted kids. My mom said when I was little, I'd walk down the street and they'd all be following me like the Pied Piper. I always just had a thing with kids and people in general, you know. And as I grew older, I think I just went with that because someone told me you're good with kids, you know. And I knew I needed to go to college. I took a year off. I didn't want to go. I was a brat. I skipped a lot. I was a poor student myself. I struggled. I had a lot of issues. And I barely graduated high school. I skipped a lot and was surprised to have my diploma signed when I opened it, actually, but I did. And I took a year off after high school to work. I worked as a home health aide. I worked my butt off. I humbled myself and took care of elderly and learned about them and, was careful with them and took good care and learned, and then decided I needed to start doing something because I knew I needed a future, you know. So I went back to college, and I wanted to go for culinary arts. And I know this sounds ridiculous, but I didn't want to get fat. And so I knew, this true
Had
story.
to get ahead of the game.
I went to ECC, and I was like, I have to make a decision because I was there, and they had a good culinary program at ECC City. And I, for whatever reason, got pushed into early childhood, and I just went with it. I was literally scared to blow up. I really love culinary. I'm interested in cooking. But I was like, I said to myself, I'm like, you're going to be around food all the time, and you're going to blow up like a blimp. And it was so superficial, but that was like my deciding factor, you know. And so I ended up going to a city college and starting in early childhood. I knew I couldn't make money doing that or have a future doing early childhood because not a lot of people do, you know. So that's just a job to me. I knew I needed a career. So I decided to go on to further my, education in education. And honestly, we're here to talk about honesty. I'm really not ever sure that was the right choice for me. And here I'm 18 years in, and people ask me, and they ask me, well, I had a coworker ask, well, why'd you go into it then? Very snooty. And well, who the hell knows? But I'm 18
the benefits,
years in.
benefits are good.
Right.
Benefits are amazing. Yeah. And I love kids. I love aspects of it. Mm-hmm. But it's been really difficult, and it's been hard on my mental health and my anxiety and just situations. It's triggered things in my life for me, and I feel like it's something that's been difficult. And
it's not for the weak.
Right.
It's not for the weak, and I'm not. But, I have to tell myself that you're not weak, you can do this all the time, 18 years into something. Mm-hmm. So I'm still not convinced, but I'm still there,
If you want to get into cooking, holler. We'll teach you.
Right, but that's my story. Honestly, it was not like I was a little kid. I used to play school. My dad was a teacher, but it's not something I used to just dream about being. Right. I dreamed about having fun, living the good life. I couldn't tell you career-wise. I just wanted to make sure that I had enough to live life well. Right.
So now, I know you both have kids. Did you have kids before college, after college? Like, how was that dynamic? Because I'm sure, for a woman, that's a complete different ballgame, that could stop your career, or some people don't let it. What?
So I had both kids while in college. For my first one, I took one semester off and then got back to it, and I was thankful. I had some family helping me out, but it was being away from them as babies, which was really hard. I had anxiety. I would cry when I left them. Like, it was so hard, but I still went,
Yeah.
And then when I had my second one, I went back. I didn't want to wait any longer, because my undergrad and my grad were about to take 7 years, and I'm like, I'm not trying to take 8 years to do those things. So 6 weeks after I gave birth, I waddled into class.
Wow.
And I was 5 minutes late, and the teacher was like, "You're late." And I'm like, "I'm sorry." In my head, I was like,
I just
fuck
birthed a child.
you.
That's it, 2 months ago. Yeah.
I was in a lot of pain. I pushed myself a little too hard, and I got sick. So, but the teachers and my classmates, they knew what kind of boat I was in, and they were extremely supportive, which... I had friends, come out with me to the park while we had my kids, friends who didn't have kids themselves. And the teachers, they were always interested in, how the kids were doing and how cute they were. So it was an experience.
Yeah. Huh. What about you, Ame
Your
Dog?
kids became like part of your education and part of your career.
I was learning a lot at the same
Yeah.
time.
I had Evan. I just got hired as a teacher. Evan was a year, my first. He's 18 now. And so I went to college. I was pregnant in college with him too. And, it was a whole thing. I was a little bit older to go back to college. So a lot of my cohort, not all of them, but a lot of them were younger girls. And so I was in a place in my life. I was married, and I was, I was ready to have this baby. And that was the way I was doing my life, So I didn't think anything of it. I just, did my thing.
Kind of went with it.
And it went with it. So I had him in December. I was I was pregnant with him when I went into student teaching, or after was I had him. And my father was real sick with cancer. So I gave birth to him, and I was like in the middle of student teaching, and my dad had passed away during student teaching, and they they don't let you miss a day, and they don't play.
They don't care.
And it is what it is, because
you
need that. It's just
corporate America for you.
Right. So I teach ever since the beginning. Teaching's been about pushing myself way out of a comfort zone that I'm comfortable with, and it was good because I don't know, people go into the military, and I always kind of thought that I had that in me, or I thought it would have straightened me out a little bit more. I think I could take it. Like, I was one of those people. So teaching was grueling and challenging, and I think that's what I like about it. But, I'm a masochist, I guess, to bring all that.
All teachers have to be, I think. I don't know.
So I was pregnant, and I had my other two when I was already working. And I took time off to sub and choose assignments, and people never understood that, why don't you just get a job? And I'm like, well, I don't have anybody to take care of my kids. My parents were gone, and I was also not loving the career, so I was subbing. I was keeping my foot in the door. I would get in real good with schools. They would keep me there. I would have everyday work. There were perks to subbing, bonuses and things. So I stayed comfortable. I still got to do my thing, but I didn't have any strings attached. And I would take sub and long-term assignments so that I could kind of keep my foot out, because I didn't want to commit to it because, sometimes it scared me and I didn't want to go, and I didn't want to be under that kind of pressure. So I took time to take care of my kids, but that was my kid thing. I had Evan in college, but he's older than my other two. And then the other two I had once I was working already. So,
Okay.
So what was it like being home raising your own kids and experiencing an environment where people would raise their kids all different type of ways? How did you handle that dynamic? Like, was it difficult? I'm certain there were challenges.
I mean, you're around misbehaved kids
Right.
that listen and are focused. I mean, I'm sure you ladies see it all.
neglected kids.
I mean, so I'm an only child, and my parents, they gave me a lot of independence. So I really didn't know anything about managing multiple kids at the same time. Teaching and learning those strategies actually helped my parenting. It helped me bring that back home, because my kids were actually just like the kids I was teaching. They were, they didn't want to sit still. They wanted to watch their tablet. They wanted to eat snacks all day. So I was like, but the one thing that struck me was, when the kids weren't progressing, I'm like, what is missing here? And sometimes what's missing is a parent who is, actually attentive to their kid. I realized some of these kids' parents weren't around. Some of these kids were babysitting their younger siblings. Yeah. And that's the difference. I mean, even if you don't have the best parenting strategies, if you show up and are present, that's half the battle right there.
Yeah.
And when when a kid,
Right.
When a kid has one parent in their life, that's great. But when they have both, those are the kids that you see that are like, their reading is increasing level. Their math is improving because they have the self-confidence and the motivation to learn.
There's a
Otherwise,
structure at home.
Otherwise, sometimes, they have other social, emotional things going on that get in the way.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
what
about
about
you,
you?
Ame Dog?
What about you, Ame Dog?
No, I'm ready to go. Just going on what you said there. That's why I was like, I was like in this.
Because it
whole
has
other-
to be a different dynamic, especially for a
Right.
mother. Like whether you're a single mother or
Like you're
you
active.
know,
That's
in,
all it really.
in a marriage.
Yeah,
you know,
no,
like she-
it for sure is. My boys are good. I came from a certain foundation, and I raised them the same way. And I'm not perfect. I'm the furthest thing from a perfect or an appropriate parent. I've got a little wild side to me. I had a rough time in life, and so, but like Gina and I talked about it today actually, and we were just, she said, but you chose to go the right way instead of the wrong way with all of that
Everyone
pain and
has
with
a
all of that.
choice.
So
Yeah.
I raised them right, and then I loved on them, and they became my reason, and I went to God, and I really tried my hardest because the darkness was so dark, and I knew what going the wrong way could do. My mom always told me your health and your freedom are the two most important things you have on this world, and I wasn't about to mess either of those things up. I wanted them badly. We're only here one time, and I'm like, I'm going to do this the right way as much as I can, but I'm not perfect. So they stay up late. They are on their games. They do choose what they eat. I do bring home treats and snacks for them, and I give them what they want. They're good kids. My younger two are on high honor roll. They're smart kids. They don't mouth off to teachers in school. I don't tolerate that. But at the same time, there's no kind of, hard discipline going on at home. They're really just good, decent kids because I think me and their father try to treat them that way. And on that, we're separate now, and we're two separate people, but we're both their parents, and we've never changed with them. And if anything, we've become better. And so there's more involvement and there's more love. So what, she said earlier about having two parents, it made me kind of cock my head a little bit and be like, wow, that's such a valid point. So I don't care what kind of household you live in. If you're, from two loving parents, no matter where they are, you could have one in a different country. But if you're from two loving parents, you got a better shot.
Gives a shit about you.
Right.
That
but
makes a difference.
Being a mom and teaching, I brought up a lot this year to these kids. But my kids wouldn't do, I find myself bringing this up and giving them an example. Well, I said, I wouldn't tell you anything different than what I would tell my own kids. I don't tolerate, they don't behave this way. I've never got a phone call from their teachers. They both worry about their grades. They do this, and I tell them, I'm treating you, that I hold you to the same standards that I would my children, and I love you the same way. And I love on those kids. I told her the last day of school, I lined them up and I told them all I loved them. And not a lot of teachers do that, and I meant it. Yeah. And they drove me crazy all year. And they made me not want to come to, but I sincerely love them, and I want the best, and I want them to continue on like a positive journey for themselves too. It's that kind of thing, So it compares in a big circle kind of way, and those are the good moments,
They probably don't hear that from anybody.
They
may not. Some of them may not. Some do. The ones that do.
Yeah.
They're the ones, and you recognize it in them,
Right.
Yeah, it's amazing when you hear this, because it is different perspectives, and teachers being around kids all day. Like, I'm sure that a teacher without kids might treat the students different because they just don't know any better, But then hearing you girls talk about, you go to work, you go to the school, and you expect these kids to behave like your kids because you've done your part with your kids for them to behave. Because my daughters tell me the same thing too all the time. They're like, Dad, these kids at school are crazy. They don't listen, and it's affecting me learning. Like, they want to learn. They want to go to school. But most of the kids in the environment you're in are not that way, because they're being raised by tablets, or their parents are just not there. Some of them don't care to be there, and some of them are either locked up or something happened, so that's it's an interesting dynamic. What's your favorite part of being a teacher? Like, what is it? Like, you said you've been doing it for 18 years. What keeps you doing it if at times it drives you nuts, like you were just saying? What is that part that you cling on to? And like you said, at the end of the year, you tell these kids you love them because they're not doing it on purpose. They're a reflection of how they're being parented, and that's what's sad about it. It breaks your heart, I'm sure, What's your favorite part of being a teacher?
Man, that's a solid question. I'll take it first because, the 18 years, and he's right, And I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to be an adult, and I'm going to be real on this.
That's all we want here.
I have a lot invested and a lot of benefits that come with that, and a lot of security that comes with that. And it was something that, as a woman who really is now independent and kind of knew she always was and was going to be, or at some point she'd need to be, and now 3 little young men to take care of, on top of it, and to leave something for, which I had a different situation with my parents are both gone, and that was a whole thing that they didn't do, and I'm not repeating that. So for my kids, something's going to be left so that everybody's good. And with that being said, I really just had no choice. I'm not hustling. I'm not going to go, I'm a mom and a teacher. I got a whole vibe. So part of what drags me in every day is that I'm invested. Yeah. It's an investment, in college and everything. I invested a lot in it, but I'm frustrated because, and it's not even like I want the easy button. It's not that. But when I tell you these days can be hard, that's an understatement. It's just like mentally grueling. And on the same note, I think honestly, if I was bored, I'd want to put one in my head. So challenge me, please. And maybe that's another reason I keep coming. Our days are short, weekends off, holidays, snow days. How can we really complain? Yeah. So there's a lot that keeps me, and the kids. And, when they're not driving me up a wall and really challenging me to this point where I'm like, I can't think because of your noise or whatever, on a one-to-one level with us sitting here in an intimate setting. And this is why, things in the education field from the top down need to be changed because we're doing it wrong. How the hell can we get through to a group of 30 kids type? That are all over the place. bring us to a small setting. Let us have you know what I mean, a small group, an intimate, and that's all life is. It's it's intimate situation. So there are things about it that I still have hope in, that I love, and I do enjoy getting through to them. And these kids love me. They'll come to me with anything. They write me notes, and it's a trust thing, and that means everything. And I don't betray that, because sometimes they need a trusted adult. I did when I was young, know. So there's things like that really keep me going.
That's
But
awesome.
on a daily basis, sometimes it's rough.
What about you?
What keeps you going?
I'm gonna second that. There's the pension. There's paid time off, summers off, holidays, snow days. You get 15 days off paid on top of all that. And it kind of just works with my own kid's schedule, right? Like I'm working while they're in school, so that always kind of worked out.
Yeah.
And every year, for me at least, it does get a little easier. I have the privilege that I'm a teacher, that I don't have to be supervising the kids the entire day. I can step out, and I push into the room, I pull kids out. I have a little bit more leeway, which is nice. I would never want to be a homeroom teacher just for that, because if you gotta go to the bathroom and no one can come relieve you, forget it.
Yeah.
If there's so that's just one of the challenges. And it is nice to, when I have a group that I can pull out of the classroom, which is part of what I do, having that smaller group, you do make those relationships with the kids, which is where the actual learning happens. When the kids have a social relationship and a social investment with a person or a group of people, then they're actually going to want to remember what you have to say.
Yeah, they're accountable. They have accountability.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Makes sense too. But how do you do that with 30
Right,
kids
you
in
don't.
one class and
You
an
don't.
hour or
Yeah.
two? That's crazy. The system is just set up
Yeah.
to fail us.
I could definitely speak to that, because that's why I dropped out of school, because I felt like I didn't fit in. And I'm in a lecture hall with 100-something kids, and it's like, I'm not even
Who
really invested in
cares?
this,
Yeah, you
Who
don't
would
have-
even know if I dipped out the back door?
Right.
And
And then going back to childhood, I remember teachers vividly based off experience. Like, oh man, this teacher was great. This teacher, and I remember the investment they made. So with that being said, you two said it was an investment not only with your time, but like I'm sure you're coming out of your own pockets for stuff in your classroom, because resources are shit.
We do.
Oh man.
So share that experience.
Well,
a poor classroom's like a poor household. You go without.
I mean, you
when
go
you don't
without if
have
you
it.
have to,
Uh-huh.
but then you got to get creative.
Well,
and
right.
who's
And
got
then you
time
get
for
it.
that?
Right.
Don't you guys gotta buy like materials out of your own pocket money?
I mean, so officially, no. Officially, if you go through the proper channels, you can get petty cash of a total of $60 for the year.
I'm sorry.
I know. I was all excited, and then I was like, wait, I thought this was something new I
for
didn't
a
know
year
about.
on a
And
classroom
before-
with 30 kids.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Oh
I
my.
My
know she was
caseload is
talking about
42
petty
kids. So if the kids didn't, bring supplies, which happens sometimes, you got to get creative. We're fortunate that we can go to the teacher's desk, but that's hit or miss. You get what they give you. You could get random stuff. You could get 200 pens and nothing. You know what I mean?
That's crazy.
Um,
Each student gets less than $2 for the whole year.
100-some days of
That's
school.
insanity.
I mean, if it's a suburban district, I've heard they get like $400 for the year in petty
Oh,
cash. But if you don't want to use the petty cash, you can go through the proper channels. The only thing is that it takes forever. And if you just want to get some decorations for your room, I've taken decorations from home. I've taken area rugs. I've taken picture frames. You take things from home to make your room feel inviting, because we learn in college the affective filter needs to be down. The emotional block the wall needs to be down in order to let information in. If a kid feels like they're in a sterile, cold environment, they're not going to want to remember anything. they have to feel at home with you and in the room.
Yeah.
And that's one of our points when they do walkthroughs. Do you have a clean, welcoming environment for your students? That's one of the check marks.
Yeah, well, I just bought some bleach and some rags, and there went my whole budget for the year. You know, like,
Yeah.
that's
That's
crazy.
crazy.
$60 for the year. That's just unreal.
Yeah, I mean,
Not surprising, but like very unreal.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And if you want something quick and I don't know,
I mean,
yeah.
can I? Because you and I can. Because I'm gonna real quick, and it's not even gonna take long. So we have, the city stepped in and they've given money to whatever for our building got redone, but we're not on the new side. Little guys, the kindergartens and pre-K and the younger students, beautiful classrooms and all of this stuff. And
Well, there's a budget for the kindergarten classrooms that have
sorry.
manipulative.
So why isn't there a budget for 4 through 8? Why isn't there a budget for second? I mean, I know, but like, why don't we get fancy little rugs and things that our kids need and tubs to put them in? And I mean,
All that
Yeah.
stuff, all that organizing stuff.
yeah, like why
Yeah.
don't we? Because
That's like-
they need that kind of environment too.
Yeah.
I would have given it to them this year. I hated my classroom this year. It was cold. But it was cozy because they brought things and I put them up and it looked like a
You do what you
like
can.
a house, like my
Yeah.
apartment.
I brought in
but-
my area rep.
But some classrooms downstairs, like, are just in buildings. That have gotten funded. They have these beautiful things for the little guys, and the little ones should have it, but so should the big ones. Like,
Yeah, agreed.
I don't know. I don't
I
why.
don't know.
I don't know.
I don't
But
It's like you had your fun with this. Now it's time to grow up.
yeah.
You know.
I guess.
Well, I know they need stuff.
Time to get
but,
real.
like,
All you
Ours
get is a
constantly.
desk.
That's
Yeah.
craziness.
our kids need stuff too. Talking about that petty
Yeah,
cash. Like,
yeah, they do.
They need more.
And then they want us to do bulletin boards, which I've gone
Oh,
to.
yeah.
You go to
Too
Dollar
much.
Tree and you get the bulletin board, outline the border, and then you go from there. Some people they go on Amazon and get all cute stuff that's the same color and matches, and
It
you
looks
know,
great. It looks
it
better
looks
than my
good.
classroom.
It looks really good.
That reason alone, there's no way I'd be able to be a teacher and use some of my. I'm already underpaid, and I got to use some of my income to do the job that you guys want me to do. And the system pretty much forces you. Like, it's crazy.
Well, they don't make it easy. No one says.
I mean, you're
Here,
underpaid
come get
already, because I don't
funding.
feel like teachers get paid enough. They're literally responsible for every generation's future,
Yeah.
and it's what's going to shape them, and they're so underpaid. It's crazy. That being said, like, on this subject, what challenges do you guys face as far as like staffing, structure, a system that's organized? When you guys walk in, is it all willy-nilly? Like, what challenges you guys have as far as that?
I mean, we could talk for the whole day about this one.
I was looking at her like, where do you want to start? She, on our last day today, she thanked us. And I know she was talking about us. She
Yeah,
thanked
was
us for
our
being
assistant
like
principal.
putting up with conditions that were not
Just
okay.
tough. Yeah.
We lost a teacher this year from our crew. So, long story short, instead of having a human being to come and take that problem on, we all had to take that problem on. And
It
I'm
was
going to stop
spread
talking
out.
there because I feel like that's a little personal to our situation.
Well, I'm not going to say names, but I'm just going to say, there's times when you need to spread kids out. If
I have desks
Yeah.
in my classroom, and we have desks, and my whole class is there. And now I have to take some, literally, where I told my foster kids, my foster class, I'd have just some kids in. They'd have to come. They'd be on the floor some days because there's no desks and chairs for them. They'd bring chairs over and just sit in the corner and do their own thing because I'm not on the same lesson teaching them because I have my own kids to teach. And so, we've stopped
it's babysitting at that point.
It's babysitting another group while I'm trying to teach my group that needs, and everybody needs something. So now my day's thrown off. So, and I'm going to, because that gets a little close to home,
So you're saying you guys lost a teacher, and instead of bringing in another teacher,
Yeah.
they split that teacher's work amongst you?
That's
Yes.
exactly
Did
what
you
I
guys
Different
get a-
learning
did
levels?
you guys get a raise for it?
No.
No.
Of course not.
You see, I can't.
That's funny.
Damn.
I can't do it.
I mean, but just, these are everyday things that everybody lets slide because we have to. And I'm not even necessarily coming down on my admin Because I like my admin, actually.
I mean, their hands are tied as well.
Right.
It just starts at the top.
It does. It
in
stops
terms of
at the test. It
you
starts
know.
at
There is no way that I'm going to put in more work for an entity for the same pay. That there's, I can't. I wouldn't. That's
Yeah.
why I can't work
Not
like
only-
in a system
but
like that.
also put your butt on the line, because if if the Board of Education wants to walk through on that day
Yeah.
and, look at your lesson that you're supposed to be doing right now at this time, and you've got kids on your floor on iPads on God knows
But
what.
how is that
because
your
they're-
fault?
Well, it's not, but it's should in their
technically
eyes.
we're still responsible.
We're responsible
Yeah.
for.
So you pick up more liability, more work for the same pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would not be me. I would not be able to do that.
But like, we're tied in, like we said. We're invested. So
And it didn't last. They did find a building sub to cover that group.
Yes.
And the last month of school, they found, a trained temp teacher that, got the class on track with the curriculum, and, so it worked out. But there's that in-between time that, in corporate America, where everything has a process, everything takes long, hiring for some reason takes too long. There's not enough people that want to be subs. It comes down to money is what it comes down to.
So going back to early childhood and raising your kids and everything, it's pretty obvious that we hear it all the time through reels or posts or whatever. Backgrounds affect a child's learning ability, and you guys kind of touched on that a little bit. So we often hear it from the people covering these stories, but like hearing it from two teachers alone, how does a child's background affect their learning ability? How does it affect them in school?
Well, sometimes you'll see a behavior, and then you find out something that's going on at home, and then everything makes sense. Everything that happens at home, the kids bring into school every day like luggage. It's like their luggage, and sometimes their luggage doesn't mesh well with somebody else's luggage, and that's when you get fights. So, and if kids are used to seeing people solving a problem by being confrontational, that's how they're going to do it in school with the person that they're having a confrontation with. And that's when, if it has escalated to that point, we as teachers have already missed our opportunity to, to have that teachable moment. And that's, more and more they're getting on board with social emotional learning, where we literally have to take on the responsibility of teaching these kids how to regulate their emotions. I mean, I can't even regulate my own emotions, let alone teach these kids how to regulate their emotions. I'm getting better at it, but, it's a skill that, especially in the internet age, that is becoming really important. Kids see stuff online, or, maybe they're friends on social media with their classmates, and all of a sudden bullying is happening, or, someone's being excluded. That's a whole other luggage that they would bring. You see kids that have lead poisoning, and they have a learning disability. You see kids that were crack babies, and they have a learning disability. You see kids that have ADHD that are on medication, but they performed better off the medication, or vice versa, where they need medication and they don't have it.
Sometimes they don't take it. Yeah.
They don't take
Kids.
it. Every kid has a whole, workup of 100 things affecting them at any one moment, and you're trying to put them on a track to convince them that they need to know something you have to say.
Yeah. When they're having real life problems at
Yeah.
home and stuff. That's
Yeah. Damn.
how do you feel about it?
I feel like I'm older in the game to have this like sort of feeling towards it, but I feel I feel like the same thing. Like, this is a new generation. We all are. And we're moving towards something different. There's a lot of different shit going on. And I'm sorry to call it back out, but especially after COVID. So we don't even, I always said when it happened that we witnessed it, but there was going to be this complete backlash of it where, say 50, 100 years especially, you can look back and see it. Now we can't. We're in it. But we have a whole COVID situation, like
it's still affecting the kids.
post-COVID situation. But like I said, that's not something that's going to be evident until, some years have gone past. But it's a different type of generation, even my own children, and the way I'm approaching it is making me bash my head against a wall, but that is because we are still approaching it in like an old way,
an archaic way,
an archaic way. And although it's not okay, like we've had a lot of kids that have come in and really just terrorized the classroom, and
Literally.
at the end of the day, to get hard and firm and yell at them, which is out of my character, but I had a big tough boy that's always in trouble, break down into tears one day when I was handing it to him. I just don't yell, and I lost it with him. I lost it with his ass. I was like, what are you doing? Get it. And he starts with the tears, this big kid that terrorizes my room every day, and I had to real quick stop myself, because as a mother, I said, all right, I'm sorry. Okay. I said, let's restart. I talked to him like a human. I said, I even asked him, I said, do people yell at you at home? He shook his head. Yeah. And I said, all right, we're not going to do that. And I never did again. To that day, I never approached him in that manner, because I knew that was something that was like going on at home, and that was definitely not something I wanted to offer to him. I don't care how bad he was for me. I realized that was not a way that I would treat a child or my own, and he is one of my own, and as much as he drives me nuts, that was definitely not something I was ever going to do with him again, and I never did. I never raised my voice to the kid for the rest of the school year, because I didn't know, and I asked and I found out, and I didn't have to go deeper than that. I'm not a counselor. That's not my job. But, and those are the moments, still true,
Yeah.
but
It's so crazy, because you guys said, things have changed a lot, especially with technology, social media. The educational system, I believe, was implemented at the beginning of the 1900s by Mr. Rockefeller, and it was made to create employees, and the system
Makes
has
sense.
not changed. Society has
Changed
changed,
little.
Right,
but
right.
it's still the same system in place, which is crazy, because once again, it's an archaic system. Now I feel like it should change. I'm not a teacher, but I got kids that go to school and stuff, and it's changed a lot. And that being said, like, how has technology and social media changed the way you teach or the way you try to get a kid's attention? I'm sure you have issues with kids bringing phones to school, and it's like a whole thing now. How has that changed? How
Chat
do
GPT.
people address teaching?
Yeah. Starting next year, we're going to have a no phone policy where the phones will be collected at the beginning of the day and released when they're dismissed. It'll be interesting, though, because teachers themselves, we need our cell phones. We have two-factor authentication to get into our systems. We have a phone tree where...
Wait, is that for us or just them?
Well, it's just for the kids, but, if the kids don't have phones and we got our phones, it's just going to be...
You're an adult.
Yeah, but, it's going to be an adjustment, and I think... it's easy for me to do, too. Sometimes I have my phone and I'm texting, it's hard. Phones, the nature of phones is it's hard to put it down.
Yeah.
You're not meant to put it down.
No, but we do get our emails on there. We get important messages on there about work. We get emergency messages. If you don't have a walkie-talkie at work and someone needs to find you, they'll call you, So, it's useful in that way. I think it'll be really good for the kids not to have their phones, but at the same time, what they really need to do, I think personally, is not have the iPads or computers as much either, because, they're not being used in the right way. I think there should be a small amount of time that is technology time, and that's it. Other than that, get a pen and paper, get a book, the screen. But now our state tests are on computer. We have computer-based testing now. So, but kids, I don't know, to look at a screen, it's so easy to zone out as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got spell check.
Yeah, there's so much. It's just changing. Everything is changing.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Ame Dog.
How do you feel about
No,
how
yeah, she's right. She's right, and she's cute because she's giving me ideas and just making me critique. Because I told you guys I don't love the sport, but I still play the game, and that's not all right. You gotta have heart to play the game. So if I'm gonna commit to it and I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it right. And she's right. And sometimes that's on us. And she's right. Those kids get those iPads and that's it. It's done.
Yeah.
And they're on Minecraft and I'm fighting with them like they're my own. And I love them like they're my own. And like I told you,
harder to control what they're doing.
So this year, whatever year starting, it's limited and it's only accessible if you're on the right thing that's educational. It gets out of hand. They're not supposed to take photos of one another. They do, and they put wallpapers up, and they're on YouTube, and they're not supposed to be. And they're on I don't mind Minecraft, and I'm on a Friday afternoon. If we've done great the whole week, I can take out a half hour for some Minecraft. It's educational. I'm all right. I like Minecraft. But besides, they're on it all day. If you give them in, you're supposed to be on something. They're not. Even if you tell them to take a test, they're gonna try to go on Minecraft. So there's got to be this limit put on it. So although I think it's wonderful, I think it really has to be monitored because they can't handle it.
Yeah,
they can't handle it.
I feel like it's done more damage than good. I'm 42 years old. I went to school before the age of computers, but I can honestly tell you, I talk to kids now and even teenagers. Their math and reading skills are horrible. So how as an educational system do you quote unquote have more resources? But I feel like kids were smarter before. Like I said, I talk to kids that are 14, 15 and you hear them reading and they can't read a sentence, let alone an essay with, stopping when the comma's there, when the period's there,
And the skills.
It's insane. And then math, don't even get me started. These kids can't add, they can't multiply, they don't know their time. I'm talking 14, 15-year-old kids, they don't know math.
They don't.
But then you got these kids in the streets hustling and they got their math
They
down.
figure it out.
But they can't read. So how do you have all these computers and all these resources? And I feel like kids' IQs are dropping. It's not nothing the teacher's doing or the kid.
Yeah.
I feel like it's the system itself. Something's not working.
To me, that's the
It's not
social,
working.
emotional aspect of learning. You need to have a person-to-person experience to connect whatever information and make it real, make it relevant.
Yeah, it's stripping away your creativity.
Yeah.
And like what you should be using your brain for, you have technology doing it for you.
Yeah, if you're doing technology, it's one thing to do a group project in a shared Google Doc. It's another thing to have a conversation with your group members.
Yeah, you're bonding.
And
you're making a
have a
connection.
debate.
Ask a friend like, yo, how do you spell this? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like actually having a conversation, learning together. So I have a specific question for you, Amy. So you've been in the game for almost 20 years. And we're talking about technology, so you've seen a shift. Talk about it.
I have, and like I said, I'm still going to bring COVID up into it because it was around that time that everything. But, I'm going to be honest with you. When I first started teaching, it was still rough. Discipline was still rough. Okay, it was still rough.
Either way.
It was rough. The discipline was rough either way. But we were not combating the same things. Also, though, I got to tell you guys, as an educator, we have these beautiful boards called Clear. What are they? Clear
Touch.
They're
That's
I love those.
They
I
are just
draw on
absolutely
those.
outstanding. And there's people, you think all of us sitting here talking, no, but I've had people say, wow, that's really cool. We don't have those. I got, my niece works in Williamsville schools, and I think, and she said, wow, those, we don't have those, or I've seen those or something, but people don't know, and they're just outstanding. There's so much you can do, and it's touch, and you can move
Assistive
things.
technology is good.
rather than drawing on a blackboard.
Yeah.
You know, for me, that was the shift. That was like, wow, this is really it. Wow, I can really show them. But now I'm not using that because they're now in their own world because they've got their own
It's
devices.
like full reliance on it.
You know, and
Yeah.
now it's the devices like their security blanket.
Yep.
You can't take it. I have to argue with a lot of my
Oh, they
big kids
cry.
and say that's not yours.
Yeah.
He'll snatch. I go to take it from him after I've told somebody not
Yeah.
to.
Property of the
And
school.
they snatch. I'm like, you're not a pit bull. I tell them now, I'm sorry, don't be snatching that. That is not even your prize. I said, your mom didn't buy that, you know, and I'll get a little like that with them because I told you, first of all. Second
Put 'em
of all,
in
I'm
check.
taking it now, and I would with my own child. Let's go
Yeah.
back to that. So there's nothing going on here that I wouldn't expect my own or the rest of your classmates have done. And now you haven't, so I'm taking it. And then there's this pull, you know, back, and I'm like, buddy, you know,
Yeah.
now you're lucky if you get it back, but I'm a softie, so I do.
Well, I learned
But, you know.
that if you go to snatch it from them, they feel disrespected. So I put my open
Right.
hand out and I say, "Give it to me," and they do. You know, So-
okay.
and I say, "I'll give it to you at the end," and I give them a choice. But if I just yoink it, you know, the one kid's finger got stuck one time, and he started crying. I was like, "Oh my God, I feel so bad." But yeah, all you gotta do, you know, make the kids feel like they have a choice even when they don't. You know, make them feel like part of the decision.
So I got a question on that right now for all of us. Fast, I'm gonna switch this. So gentle parenting, I'm all about it. I'm a sweetheart. I love it. I love when people are like soft on me. But we're lacking it. I put my kid in football the other day. Came off the field crying, and that's let's just let that go because I'm not gonna bring his name up. But like, I say to myself all the time, and like, I really want to be treated nicely. I do. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've been treated rough. I don't like it.
Yeah.
So please be gentle with me. But I'm not too gentle to throw down when I need to. And there's something missing here with these kids because they are. So I'm like, so the fact that I can't,
Tough love
a teacher
sometimes.
would have walked by my desk and snatched something off if they wanted to. And I would have been like, oh shit, I hope they don't call my fucking mom and tell them that. Like, kind of shit. And now it's like, oh, I'm sorry, can I please have your iPad? Now, while I agree with you, because I do, because there is a real side to me that's like that, okay, because I'm respectful. I think we owe all of each other respect. We're all here doing the same thing.
100%.
Kids too. I'm not going to disrespect you unless you do me, but that goes for you and you or an 80-year-old. You know what I mean? Let's keep it. And so we teach them that. But like, I'm not going to over foo-foo it with you and butter it all up and sugar it. Like, oh, give me the iPad. And I'm
No,
not
I just
saying
put
that's
my
what
open
you're
hand
no.
out now.
Yeah.
I
You
know, and it's a trust thing. But how far do we take this? Let's, let these kids make choices and and how far do we take that before it now starts becoming a problem that
It's a
we're
fine
dealing
line.
The
with?
dynamic
It
is
is
shifted.
a fine
It's
line,
like they have
you
control
know?
over y'all at that point. Like,
Right.
my parents are one call away, and they'll spaz on you. So it's
Right,
like not even
you
a shift
know?
in technology, but it's like shift in discipline. Like you can't even talk to them like you used to.
It's crazy hearing this because I went to school in Puerto Rico. There's no hall monitors. You can leave class to go to the bathroom and not come back.
Really?
But also, when I was going to school in Puerto Rico, believe it or not, teachers used to hit us. It was.
I wish I could sometimes.
It
like
was
what?
the
Like a
norm.
whack? Like what kind of hit? Like
Nah,
pop.
I'll never forget Miss De Jesus, the second grade teacher. You know those
Called her out.
12-inch wood rulers?
Yeah.
She had like 8 of them taped up. And when you misbehave, she would whack your wrist or your butt cheek. Like I used to go home with black and blues. And, parents were like, you probably deserved it.
Yeah.
Now to come out here where now competition isn't even encouraged. You don't get trophies for being good. You get trophies for participation.
Right.
I hate that shit. I feel like that breeds weak kids in general. The whole, everybody gets a participation trophy. No, I feel like the best players should get something extra, same thing in talent shows. Like my daughters went to a talent show 2 weeks ago, and it was crazy because the next day they got a standing ovation when they sang, and the next day I'm like, hey, did you girls win anything? And they're like, no, Dad, it wasn't a competition. What do you mean? It's a talent show.
They're not competitions anymore.
That to me, that's just so absurd. Like I can't relate to that. I feel like competition develops discipline,
Yeah.
because you learn how to lose.
Yep.
You learn how to win. You're being taught a system. Baseball kept me off of so much more trouble You know, I
Yeah.
mean, I was still a horrible kid and I got in trouble a lot. But if I wasn't as involved in baseball as I was, the competitiveness, because you're going to school with these kids.
Right.
Yo, I just beat you yesterday. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Or you hit a shot and I caught it. You know, I think like it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And now it's just been taken away from kids. And now you got these kids that if they're playing a game, a board game or something, and they lose 2 games in a row, they start crying,
Yeah.
they start cheating, they start throwing tantrums. I can't allow that.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of it. I hate it. And I just feel like it breeds entitlement and spoiled brat into kids' lives. You know, I feel like competition is a healthy thing that every kid should have. I mean, they should be competitive about who's the best reader in class, you know, because like I said,
Yes,
it's all
they should.
being diluted. And it's at the point where kids don't even care. I hear 12, 14-year-old kids talking about school like an afterthought. They don't want to go to college. They're waiting to be done with school or to be old enough to just walk out of school because there's just nothing being offered. And I feel like that human connection has been, it's just disconnected,
Yeah.
you know?
It's like that competitive edge you mentioned. It teaches you that failure is necessary in order to grow.
Yeah, you
And
got to
if you
lose
don't
gracefully.
learn that, like you'll
Yeah.
never even try hard enough to
That's
fail.
going to be a good theme for next
Those are the
year.
kids that are in
Yeah,
a
dude.
store
Yeah.
throwing
Yeah.
tantrums because their
Accept
parents
your
didn't want to
failure.
get them a
Yeah.
candy bar. I used to tell my daughters when they were 2, 3 years old, I'm like, if you ever do
Right,
this to
you'll
me
never
in
get
public,
a candy bar again.
bro, you're not eating candy. You know, so my kids know better than to act like that. I mean, I used to get preventative ass whoopings. My dad would smack me before we walked in the store, like, yo,
Like, you
don't be
better not
running
do some
around.
shit.
You
Yeah.
better not. Like, bro, at least let me do something first before
Right.
you spank. Nah, I used to get
Right.
preventative ass whoopings, you know? It's just such a
Security
different, you know,
deposit.
now you can't discipline your kids. Some kids
Right.
need, you know, like I was a kid that I needed sometimes to be spanked.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not every kid listens to just words and threats, because that's the other
Sometimes they
thing with
need that.
parents nowadays.
Yeah.
I've learned if you tell your kid you're gonna do something,
And you don't
you
do
better
it.
do it,
Yeah.
because if you don't follow through, they're gonna eat you alive. You know,
They
Yeah.
do.
it's
Kids too.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
it's so different. Yeah.
So I got a 2-part question. Well, mainly, you guys can like go off on this one. Simple. Is there hope?
In the educational system.
Come on. you
'Cause
gotta
you're damn
say
near
it
raising
together
these-
with me, plain and simply. Yes.
Of course. there
Yeah.
is.
Of course.
There's already changes happening. Things are moving in different directions. I think education is in a different place today than it was when it started. I think that is
Yes,
true.
It is. It is.
They're starting to have more and more strategies, like a wider array of strategies to help kids. They're having more supports, which, you know, I think that all comes from people who care and they're advocating, and people doing research are, you know, getting the word out and giving trainings. And, you know, I think especially teaching literacy has come a really long way.
Huh. Now, when these boards and these districts are making changes, are they getting the teachers involved in these
They do.
changes?
They are able to.
You know,
They
like
do.
are there meetings where? Because I feel like at the end of the day, the teachers should be the ones talking about what needs to change, instead of like, I don't know, a superintendent that
Yeah.
hasn't been in a classroom for 10, 15 years. You're so out of touch with what's really going on. I feel like the teachers should have a bigger voice, because they're the ones dealing with these kids and the times changing, you know,
Yeah.
and the same system, like I said, that's almost a century old, it's what's still in place.
Yeah.
Mhm. You're in the field.
Yeah.
We do, and I'm gonna talk for a minute about accountability and ownership. We do have the right, and we do, but I can't just do this on my own, like, or we can't, and we need a whole lot of other people that feel the way we do to make major changes happen, and to do it, and to not be too preoccupied or too busy with their own lives, or to just I don't know. I don't care. I don't care, or I haven't, or sometimes, let's not say that. Sometimes I don't, or I haven't had this epiphany where I'm like, oh my God, this is a cause I have to fight for because I feel like it's useless. I feel like, why bother? And I feel like the big guys are going to do what they're going to do anyway. So sometimes, but, you know, once again, just like voting, you know, they say one vote counts. And so I think, you know, even for me to talk about this openly tonight, I think if I really want to see a change, that it's something that I need to find groups and find camaraderie and find other teachers that do too in the same way. And then we need to speak up and share, because we do have the ability to sit in on those decisions and to,
we do.
to listen to them. You know, I mean, we can't change them as they're being done, but just like you would in any democracy, we belong to a really great union, actually.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons that I stay, because it's such a reputable one, but we do. So, but you know, it takes a lot of things to
I
It's a
just,
trial,
I'm
yeah.
listening to you ladies talking, like earlier on, you use words like, oh, you know, well, we can't do this, we can't do that, you know. Wise man once said that when you try to change the system from within, eventually the system ends up changing you because of what you said. You know, one voice alone,
You're in the minority.
You're swimming against the current. Now
Right.
people are going to look at you different. You know,
Right.
you
I
might
feel
catch
that
some
way,
hostility.
you know.
You know, some coworkers might not agree with you and now are treating you differently, where I
mean,
just,
yeah, that happens.
it's such a vital thing, education. You know, like I said, you guys are responsible for the next generation, and the connection between teacher and student. Now I have daughters, like I said, and I remember we had probably a third of the resources that kids have now in school. But I don't know, all the kids I grew up with understood basic math. You know, they could grab a book and read, you know, and now there's more kids that can't do it than the ones that can actually.
I mean,
do
we
it.
could talk for hours about
It's
the
easy.
reasons why that has changed.
They can access it. They don't need to find it. They don't need to go to an encyclopedia or borrow a book from a library.
No, they could use a
Or do
calculator.
the work to get an answer, because they have it at their fingertips. We all do.
Yeah.
You know, so this is where it changes. This is where we say, all right, I got to get on board with it. Okay, I might not like it all the time, but there is a future, and things have changed since I've started tremendously. Socio-emotional is huge. You know, we're
Yeah.
focusing on kids like baggage. And
Yeah, I
you know,
think kids
and
have more
there's just-
baggage today than
Yeah.
Things are changing. You know.
Yeah, I mean, everything's changed. You know, you got a lot of kids raising kids now.
Yeah.
You know,
and not just that. I feel like, you know how they say the level of the water is different for everyone. Someone might be shorter. You know, the life skills that you need to handle different problems, and some of those problems are your own education. You know, they don't have those problem solving skills. If your parents were active in your life, or you had someone in your life that helped you learn how to solve problems, then you're going to apply that to anything you come in contact with, any content area you see in the school setting as well. You know, but if you're not really ever put in those situations, those real life situations that give you a skill to solve a problem, then when we give you a math problem that says, you know, you go to the store and buy 5 boxes of pencils and this and that, where are the problem solving skills? Those are just words on a paper to you now. You don't have any visualization of a situation like that to solve a problem.
that's crazy.
Wow.
It's deep and it's true. We're
it's
in
the skills.
deep with
Everything
things
is
like
skills.
that. The things in short, the things they want us to teach versus the thing these kids are actually
Yeah, what's
capable
gonna get their
or
attention.
need to learn. I'm not putting down a society. I understand the change. I understand that socioeconomic group I work with. I was part of that group for a really long time. Like, that's not it. Let's not give them a curriculum and say we got to get XYZ scores on this when you're
All about test scores. That's what it comes down to.
when you're not even targeting a group that can even semi handle that,
Yeah.
you're setting them up for failure, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
what about
do you
retaining
know?
that information? It's just like you're cramming for a test, and then it's just like, okay,
Yep.
test is over. Now I don't even got to think
It's
about
strictly memorization, if that, and our kids don't even bother with that. They don't
Yeah.
care. They don't know why, because they don't even think
Yeah.
we know where to start, you know. And
Well, everything now, so the math test has changed to where, you know, it's not just they're giving you a multiplication problem. They're giving you a paragraph
ridiculous.
of a situation.
It's
and
a
you
setup.
have to imagine the situation.
it's a setup.
And
Some of these kids can't even read. Like we
It's
said.
a
Right.
setup,
if
you know.
cannot read, you will not pass
Why would you
the math
do
exam.
that? Instead of just giving them a straight math problem, what was wrong with arithmetic? If you need arithmetic, you'll need it to do that job. If you
Right.
need a word, why would you need a
apply
word
that to
problem?
anything.
Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you just put word problems with reading?
I don't know.
I'm just, I
And
don't know.
I don't know. They're
You know.
testing skills that you cannot teach in the classroom per se.
Yeah, I mean, to have one system for hundreds of kids where every kid is its own mind, they're all
Yeah,
genuine,
where their
there's
sets
no malice.
held to the
How
same
can you
standard.
have one system that's going to work for all these kids? It just is dumbfounding. And when you have kids, it starts clicking more. You know, you've talked about so much today that me, even as a parent, I didn't think of it that way
Wow.
because I'm not submerged on it. You know,
Yeah.
before I have kids, or imagine not having kids and trying to relate to these things that you're talking about. And then you got to go home and deal with your own kids. Like, now
That's
I
a
understand more. There's days where she comes home and she's like, I just want to go to the room for at least 30 minutes by myself. I don't want to hear. And to me, honestly, for a while,
Same.
we used to argue about it because I'm like,
I don't get
why,
it.
why are you overreacting? Why are you being so dramatic?
Right.
Because
Man.
I'm disconnected. I can't retain, you know. But, you know, hearing all this now, it's like, damn, you know, because you're dealing with crazy kids at school, and now you got to come home and deal with your own kids. You know,
Yeah.
in the morning, you got to send your kids packing before you even clock into work.
Yeah.
You know, like, it has to be a challenge, even in the morning, waking up and being like, oh, you know, I'm so excited that I'm going to go and teach these kids. Nah.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly can't think of a teacher that I've met that's been teaching for more than 10 years that's like a happy person or passionate about their job. Most of the teachers
get
that I've
jaded.
met
You
after
get a
like
little
8, 10
jaded.
years, they're like,
Burnt
it's kind
out.
of like whatever.
Yeah.
You know, it's
It's like you said, the system is built to raise employees, right? And it's like
Yep.
they want you teaching certain things, not like actual life skills and things you need.
yeah, because they don't
So
want
they're-
leaders.
They don't want creativity.
Right.
They don't want independence.
old
They
school.
want reliance on that
Yeah.
system cyclically, or you know.
Yeah.
s-
I
it's
mean, they do
cyclical.
have different schools popping up now that are like, what's the word I'm looking for? They're what is?
preparatory.
No, they have different. The word will come to me, but there's different schools that
Like
don't.
charter, magnet?
No, it's it'll come to me, but they're different. They have different ideologies, different approaches to education. They're not, you know,
Montessori kind
Montessori.
of thing.
They're not glued, or there's other ones too. I'm
But those are
can't think of
private
it.
entities too,
Right.
where they can pick and choose what kids. You know, these schools
Yeah.
are great if you can afford them.
Yeah.
Right.
You
But
know,
that's
or if you live in the
exploratory learning.
suburbs. So it's like, I feel like it makes it even worse because now these schools are getting a batch of even worse. Nothing is even.
Different batch of kids. The batch of kids that's left over.
Yeah, it's the kids that couldn't get into schools like City Honors or Performing Arts or these schools that you have to test. That's what, because I remember my only year in school in Buffalo was 2000, and I was forced to go to Grover Cleveland. McKinley, City On, none of these schools would take you if you were coming out of the country. You needed to be a state resident for at least a year. So some of my classmates at Grover didn't even speak English. I had kids in one classroom from 10 different countries that were just starting to, in my senior year, you know, they're just starting to learn how to speak English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and now I have to sit here and go at their pace. Because there's no other
Yeah.
other
That's a lot
choice,
of
you
them.
know. And now this school is getting these horrible reviews, but look at the system you have here. There's 20 different languages being spoken.
Yeah.
Where are you gonna find teachers
Yeah.
that speak the thousands of dialects
I mean,
that
there's
come from
there's
Africa? and
strategies.
stuff?
You don't need to be an expert in those languages. There's strategies. And they had a whole high school that was called Newcomer Academy, and they closed it because the test scores were too low.
Same thing with Grover. It got closed down.
Yeah. I mean, of course, if you have newcomers, they're not going to perform on the New York State test in English.
Not in English, but some of these kids, their math.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my! I mean, I went to school with Russian kids, Indian kids, and their math skills were out of this world. How can you blame them or punish them because they can't speak your language? They just moved here.
Yeah, what are we talking about? Why? Seriously, stop and think about it for a minute. And this is the trend. This is the kind of rebellion that I would love to lead. What are we teaching them to pass a test? I mean, and that's so stupid, but are we really?
Yeah, that's
I
what
don't
it is.
care where it comes from or whoever deemed that being a correct way to assess
New
like
York
people.
State.
It's called money.
How
it's
about
funding.
we just trust people, put them in a school building, and let's teach these kids how to live life because they're going to need to take care of us, each other, and the future generations. What the hell does a state test have to do with any of that? Put them in. Trust us to actually teach them life skills, and I guarantee you things will
and
level
do
and
small
straighten
classes.
themselves out. Like
Yeah.
everything. Have a little cooking class. Have a little this class. Then we'll do
When I
ELA and
went
we'll
to
do math for a
school,
little while.
Workshop.
Let's just
Puerto
keep them
Rico.
busy. Like I don't need them on
Yeah.
their iPads. I need them to be doing things that they're going to enjoy doing, not
Yeah.
sitting there. And we're instructing them how to take 3-column notes to put on some tests that they don't even understand or care about, like
No.
or know how to take. It's ridiculous.
We had a period in Puerto
Like-
Rico called industrial arts, and for a month they teach you some cooking, basic baking, then they would teach you some carpentry, like basic stuff like you guys were saying that you can apply in real life. I mean, what percentage of what you learn in school from kindergarten to your senior year do you take on with you to deal with life?
Reading.
Besides
Just
becoming
like
part of the
reading and
system and
writing.
becoming an employee, a
That's it.
part of the machine.
Yeah. So
know?
based off his anecdote right there, I got another question. Gina, like you're multicultural, you figured your things out before you got into this school system. Like, what do you know about school systems in other countries and other continents compared to this? Like, how can you compare?
Well, I don't know too much about that's an opportunity to learn because I'd be willing to bet money that there's some other systems out there that work better than ours. I mean, I even know
100%.
I've
yeah.
I showed it to my kids one year. I was having a real hard time with the 4th grade class, over in the fruit belt. Never mind, we're not talking that. But,
No, you could go.
Say no more.
but
Say no
I
more.
was
Say
having
fruit
a
belt.
rough
I
time
heard
with a
it.
few of these boys, and I put on this video from Japanese or I can't remember if it was Japanese or Chinese culture. But they showed a day in the life of a student over there, and they start early as hell, and they start by making their beds and serving breakfast, making it, serving it, cleaning up the dishes,
Oh, wow.
then sitting down, learning arithmetic and writing. Then they have like physical activity, and then they do like an app. They do lunch, they prepare, they serve, they clean it up. They have a whole and there's videos out there, you watch them. But this is
Like,
an
think
old,
about
old,
that.
but,
Yeah, that's a
I
great
mean, I'm
idea.
just saying, and they're
Putting
very
kids
successful.
to serve lunch.
Yeah.
The
I
cooks,
mean,
you
why
know, those are
not?
things that you
Trust
take
them with that.
to real
And-
life. You
right.
don't put them on the stove, but they can serve. They could be out there on the buffet line. It makes a different connection. Even
Keep them busy,
between
keep
the
them
kids,
kinetic,
yes.
keep them, and then give them pride
they
in
love
something.
it. It's fun to them.
Because they're busy doing nothing, and they
Yep.
fight,
Yeah.
and they're playing with things, and they're bored. They're bored. We're not challenging them. They don't understand what we want them to do. This is for us, not them.
Yeah.
They don't
Right.
care about that. We have to get through to them and make them want to. So
Yeah.
give them something. They love to sweep. They love you give them a job to do. They
Right.
love to cook and pretend to play. Let them do that then, because this is not working.
And
that
every
this is-
time we cook at home with the girls, they love it. Peel
Right.
garlic, peel the onion. Been showing them how to chop. They get into it. When we made gnocchi, remember they were all cutting gnocchi, and then when they tried it, it's like, this is so much better because we seasoned it or we did this. They feel so proud and accomplished. Whereas just sitting in front of a screen, and you're filling
Right.
out circles and stuff. I don't know. Like, it's just
Yeah.
a shame that now, with more resources, we're doing less for the kids. And I'm not
Right.
talking about U.S. teachers. It's the curriculums, the system as a whole. What you're giving, the tools you're given to try to impact these kids' lives.
Yeah.
It's just a shame.
Like,
It
what's the moral
really
code?
is.
Like, what are the ethics behind it?
Yeah.
Like, is it really multicultural, or is it like just the ethical way?
It's become about funding. You know, you gotta
It is
do good on
multicultural.
the
You gotta pass
testing
the
because
test.
you get funding. If you don't pass,
Uh-huh.
you don't get funding. And now it's just an endless cycle because now next year you have less resources and more kids are coming in just as messed up. Just from the background at home, there's more split
Worse.
homes now. You know, it's just a generational thing. You know, so I hope you ladies are right saying that there's hope, but I feel like something needs to change from the top.
Yep. That's the problem.
Like, can you tell which ones, like, early on are going to be like, okay, like, you're going to be this, and that's like, if you don't change these habits,
Like
there's-
as far as kids
Oh,
like
you
go.
know.
projection.
You
Oh
can
yeah,
see
we
it. You
know.
can see it.
We got
scouting.
some just behavior. Sometimes it's just a look in their eyes plus the behavior, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna try to get through to this one, but then I'm gonna just pass them along and pray for the best. Because
Damn.
just like you'd pick up on a grown-up's energy, you pick up on kids'
Yeah.
energy.
Oh, yeah.
That was us. That was all us, and they'll be grown. They're little people, and yeah, sometimes I'm like, yep, I don't know about this one, you know. And I
Damn.
wish them well, and I seriously
funny, but, like,
want,
damn.
but,
No, but you know, because I mean,
Like,
like you said,
shit.
she's dealing with
God
that.
damn it.
Yeah. Not every kid is
Damn.
gonna fit into that one mold, especially with kids. Like, there's no BS in them. You know, there's
Straight
no
and narrow, bro.
malice. There's a level of innocence, especially in the
Yes.
grades you're
Yes.
teaching. You know, and the fact that they all have to go through the same system is nuts. There should be at least one period where, like you said, you should just trust the teachers, the people you are paying to do their job how they feel fit to impact these kids' lives. Because at the end of the day, school is already forced into every kid. If you don't send them to school, that's considered child abuse. I feel like it should be a memorable experience. You know, it's 12, 13 years of your childhood, 7, 8 hours a day, you know, and some of these kids leave literally with nothing, no skill, nothing, and they're just bound to end up in jail or doing no good,
Yeah.
you know. So I don't know. I hope the head honchos hear this
Yeah.
because it needs to change from the top. You
Good
know?
wins
Yeah.
eventually, you know.
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's the right thing, so it's like you're always going to have the odds stacked against you. Unfortunately.
Well, Ame Dog, Gigi, it was a
Oof.
pleasure interviewing both of you. This was awesome. This one was fun.
I swear, each episode keeps getting better.
Yeah,
and better,
I can't believe how little I knew, you know, about what teachers go through as teachers. It's
Yeah.
insane.
And
So,
the stigma is like, they don't give a fuck. Once school's over, they go home. And
That
it's
is
like,
so sad how parents and generally think that. Some of them.
We give
I feel
a
like
fuck.
it-
podcast is out.
Oh, yeah.